What's up? Welcome to the latest episode of Black People Parenting. Inside of this episode, we are talking to none other than Dr. Bambi Gaddis. And we got the one and only Coach Ken Blocker,
Yo, yo,
Coach Block up here.
what's up?
Inside of this episode, we like to talk about health and wellness once a month with Dr. G. Dr. G, I was with Dr. LaShonda yesterday, and she thought that it had been about 2 weeks since the last time we were together. And I had to tell her that no, it had been a month because we do these once a month. So we have these conversations once a month where we talk about health and wellness and issues like that. And since June is Men's Health Month, Men's Mental Health Month, I wanted to have Coach Blocker come on and have a discussion and have a conversation about specifically our young men and how we are addressing health and wellness with them, right? Because oftentimes when we talk about health and we talk about men's health, we oftentimes focus on 35 and up, or 40 and up, the old heads like me and Coach
Mhm,
Block. But we oftentimes neglect, as Dr. Gaddis and I were just discussing, we
mhm.
oftentimes neglect the health and the wellness and the mental health and the sexual health and the decision making and all of these things of our young people. So that's why I thought it would be great to have Coach Blocker up here with us today. If you're watching us on the YouTube, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching us on the Facebook, be sure to do the same, like, share, and subscribe. We're on Instagram. Thanks to Coach Block. He told me how to do that. I appreciate you, sir. So I am live on Instagram with this right now. Be sure to do the same, like, share, and all the things that you do on Instagram. So, Dr. Gaddis, welcome. Thank you. Coach Blocker, welcome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're running a few minutes behind, so let's dive right into it. Block, you are someone who has participated in sports on many a level. High school football, I would assume before then you probably played Pee Wee, Pop Warner, all of those things.
Yes, sir.
Going up to now to be you've coached, you've coached on the high school level, you've achieved success on that level, so you know what it's like to come in contact with these young men. So the first
Mhm.
question I want to ask is that what do you see as the connection between physical fitness in our young men and their mental well-being?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And
For sure.
secondly, sorry for the lateness. My bad. Let's go into it. I'm sorry.
You're good.
My bad. But here's what I see. Most of the time when we're talking about these young men and their physical fitness and all that, a lot of that has been geared by social media and society.
Mm,
Because you'll have a lot of young men who will start to take proteins, creatines, and all these things, all these enes that they don't even need to take in the pursuit of trying to find the ultimate goal or to grab the ultimate goal of the scholarship or high school. And it's starting now, and it's kind of bad. It's starting as young as middle school, because the high school kids now, you kind of, when you hit ninth grade, you got to be on the roll. You got to hit that thing flying, and there's a lot of pressure for it because as much as coaches don't want to admit it, they always want to see you bigger, stronger, and faster. And there's not a lot of thought put into how the young men are even doing what they're doing. It's just, oh, he gained 10 pounds from this year to last year. Nobody's necessarily even asking the parents, like, how did y'all do that? Or what is he taking? Or what are the side effects with this? And it's a high pressure environment. It's extremely high pressure. And the kids, they get trainers now, high school. Like, usually that didn't happen when we were, our age. We didn't get those guys until we got to college. Now you have high school kids who have trainers who try to bulk their bodies up, and sometimes it's too soon, causing a lot of wear and tear on their bones too early. So you see a lot of young people now getting injuries that you wouldn't get until you were in college, because they are just not necessarily educated enough to do this. So there's a lot of pressure in this world with athletics on our young people. But most of it stems from the parents applying this type of pressure. Like, kids rarely go and say, Mom, could you buy this creatine? Because they don't know any better. Or Dad, could you buy this? It's more so coming from the parents applying pressure to see these young people successful based upon other people's success, not specifically their own child.
Mm. Now you talked about social media, and
Mhm.
Doctor, do you want to say something? I'm sorry. Go ahead. You talked about social media, Block, and I want to talk about the influence that you think that social media is having on, not just the psyche of the young people, because
Mhm.
comparison syndrome is real. I would assume that
Mhm.
if you see a running back and you're a running back and you see somebody on Instagram and he run a 3.4 40, and you feel like you got to do everything you can to run a three
Mhm.
four 40 and all of those things. So is it more of like a comparison syndrome type of situation, or is it more of a I'm going to do what I can do to get to the next level, regardless of how it impacts my health?
So I think it might share a little bit of both. I'm not even gonna lie. The comparison syndrome is real when it comes down to these parents. Like, so I have a company, First and Goal, where I literally run seminars to educate parents about how like the recruiting process goes. And you
Hmm.
can't allow yourself to look at how somebody else is being recruited and think that that is your path. Every single path to be recruited to college is unique. So, but you will, because of the light that is shined on all these players who get offers and say, "Oh, well, I've been offered by 10 schools." Well, now it causes pressure amongst other players on the team. It causes pressure from like other schools that you may play, rival schools, because now they want to see their light shine as such as the other students. So, of course, with that, they get to go to the colleges and put on the college gear and take all these pictures, but not realize that that's all fluff. Like none of that is these college coaches will throw out offers to students and they're not committable offers. It's just offers because you just threw it out there. So because the kids and parents will share it. So then it keeps that school on the top of the visual board for all these other players. So there's so many games to it. And that's one. That's one major one. Um, then so that's the comparison side. Then the other side with social media is just the monster that has become like this thing with NIL, because now players in high school want to get paid. They get paid for their name, image, and likeness. So the more that they put out, the more content that goes out, the more that these companies want to grab these kids. But it has also caused another lane of pressure, because you'll see kids who think they should get something or feel entitled to get something that another player has gotten, but has not done a third of the work. So it's a crazy game out there mentally for these young people, because college now is the new NFL, and
Hmm.
now the high school is the new college, because these kids can get paid for their name, image, and likeness.
Yeah. Now, Dr. G, you do have grandchildren and great grandchildren. Are any of your um, grandchildren and great grandchildren involved in sports?
Actually, no. Let me digress. I need to digress on two parts, Dion, before I want to give a global context of how
Mhm.
we're talking about these young men. I say that as a woman who was raised by a man, um, who had an older brother that did not arrive until I was almost out the house, meaning my dad took custody of him and raised him. Um, I need to edify the fact that part of this conversation we're having with HVTN, where the audience could see I serve as a faith ambassador, is that we are really trying to reset attitudes, beliefs, and increase knowledge among different populations. And in this case, we're sounding the alarm about Black men. And so, for those that are listening, I need for the scope of really getting into with Coach Ken about the why, the fact that we're seeing these things manifest in people of your age, The fact that we're seeing these late diagnoses of things being revealed when they should have been picked up earlier. They should have been identified and potentially addressed during the teens and late teens, and for some, they should have been really addressed between the ages of 19 and 35. So if you'll allow me, let me give a couple of quick facts. Number one, Black men, the leading cause of death for Black men are heart disease, cancer, COVID-19, accidents, and stroke. Number two, Black men's life expectancy is 6 years less than Black women. So most of us Black women who have a partner, a husband, a mate, they potentially will pass before we even retire, and we will more likely go into retirement alone or either looking for a new mate. Number three, the suicide rates for young Black men between the ages of 15 and 24 have skyrocketed. We used to say it was only white folks' kids that terminated life. That is no longer the case. And when they live in a rural community where they have no doctors, no hospitals, no physicians, what do you do? And so in closing, we look at the things that we know lead to some of these after effects. So I notice, like, when men play sports, they're all in shape, right? But because we did not spend time helping them adopt healthy behavior, as soon as they stop playing ball, as soon as they stop moving, they pick up this tremendous amount of weight, which leads to other issues. So about 44% of Black men are obese or carrying too much weight. So many of our men don't have access to dentists. And we all know that problems with dentistry lead to other physical outcomes: hypertension, diabetes, and prostate cancer. And so we're talking about young people right about now. How is it that, and Coach Ken started to talk about it, about the things that people like him who are in leadership can look at a man and identify early on that they potentially will have issues down the road where the coach may or may not be able to address it. And so that is where I sit and asking this question to Coach Ken is, when you think of all these leading causes of death for Black men as a whole, knowing that all of these men were young at what time, what do you see as signals, or what do you see when you talk to these men, young men who may be having a mental health issue, where you could visually see, because of your experience, that this depression they're going through is potentially leading to something far more drastic? How do you identify it through your coaching? And then what do you do when your spirit is telling you this kid's got issues?
Yes. So it's a very great question, and this is also something that I discuss amongst the seminars that I do to parents, because I don't talk about the fluff. I talk about the ugly side of sports. And what you're saying to a coach is considered the ugly side of sports. You don't talk about this, and usually most people will shun what I'm about to say. Performance anxiety is the number one thing that a lot of these players, especially younger players, they suffer from. And no one usually takes the time to diagnose this until it's too late, till the kid starts to shut down, his body's not functioning the way he wants to, or his thoughts aren't not as clear. And where it manifests itself at parents, if you're watching this, is in the classroom. So if you have a football player and he's not achieving a certain way that you're accustomed to in the classroom, something's wrong. And it can come from, as you were just talking about, identifying a player who may be too big, like the BMI. body mass index. When you see players who are lifting and getting too big too soon, and everybody's just pushing them to get bigger, 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 but then next thing you know, sleep apnea is a problem for a young fella that's 17 or 18 years old because he's too big. These are things that your average coach will not pay attention to if he's never seen it on a higher level. It is imperative for parents to know who your coaches are so that you can identify, my son wasn't snoring, but he gained 10 pounds. Now, we got to get that 10 pounds back off of him. My son was able to focus in class, and now he's not focusing in class. Then what is the switch and the change? I always tell the parents that you can identify this in their behaviors at home when downtime happens, because your body's going to start telling the story. If he can't stay awake, something's up. If he's always hungry, something else is going on. And these are the triggers that you need to talk to with your doctor and not the coach, because some parents tend to take their child to the coach as if he has a doctor's degree for whatever these physical symptoms are, and they don't. So your relationship through this process for your young folks need to be with the doctor as your child is growing through this athletic process.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
COVID, we lost so many Black men to COVID. And part of it is a vaccine hesitancy and vaccine defiance. That's what I'm calling it, vaccine defiance. For the young people, what is your stance on that? What conversations do you have? You get with the traveling schedules and all of this. Is it to your advantage to have your team members vaccinated? Do you get resistance?
So you're going to get resistance
too. So I'm making some assumptions that I'm not addressing.
It's okay. So like for me, I felt like when COVID happened that the kids shouldn't have played football. We didn't know enough about what was going on with COVID at the time that things started to have them out there. But that also speaks to the business of athletics from youth all the way up to the NFL. These schools depend on the finances that these players bring in. One of the biggest money grossers for every school is your football program. So if you don't have a football program generating money, other things will suffer, other programs will suffer. So they're going to force that, right? So now the viewpoint that I had was, if we're going to put these young people out there, then we do need to discuss vaccination and what vaccination is going to do to their bodies while they're growing. And nobody has those specific answers. So yes. I was not 100% for these young people getting the shot right away. I was not, because until we understood, like, how is this going to transition to now, you got kids who are working out, you got kids who are running, you got kids who are sweating, you got kids who are super, super physical. Is there anything that may happen with the heart? The one thing that you mentioned was heart. I have actually seen players drop dead on the field at practice because nobody paid attention to how the person was breathing, what was going into the person prior or after practice. Like, so there are things that you have to pay attention to and be diligent, and then trust the parents are telling you somewhat of the truth of the history of the medical history of the athletic player, because you don't get that either. Once they take their physical, whatever that doctor signs off on, and some of these doctors know parents and they just sign off and not even pay attention to the physical. So you're out there with a kid that may have been misdiagnosed with something, which has happened to me. And now you have to make the decision as the professional. So it is very hard and very difficult. But for me, for COVID, I felt like it should have been a pause until we learned more about what was going on. Because you had people, just because they wanted their kid to play, whether they cared or not, stick them. And
where do you sit now? Where do you sit? And I say this with an expectation of potentially addressing some of what you said. Where do you sit now as it relates to COVID-19 specifically. I'm not bringing up the fact that many parents are also not vaccinating their young people against HPV, which is prevalent in in teens, etc. Where do you sit now?
I believe personally, for me, that because I got vaccinated, I do believe that we hold a responsibility towards others to be vaccinated. That's my personal response. But that's also because I'm an adult who did my research to feel comfortable enough for me. I don't think people should just randomly get their children vaccinated without some type of understanding of your health and your family line, of how things may, change some things. I don't think you should just do it to play the sport. And so that's kind of my stance. Like, if you're going to be vaccinated, it should definitely be more than just because I want my son to play a sport right now.
But what about? So let me ask this. So let me ask this, Coach. When you say that, there are other vaccinations out there like Tdap, measles, mumps, and rubella. And when the schools say, okay, well, your kids got to have this by kindergarten, they got to have this by the time they got to have this by the time they go to high school. I didn't see nobody looking on Google and say, let me see what's in the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. Let me see what's in the Tdap vaccine. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. They still ain't saying it. So why is it now that we're in this age of social media and everybody has the ability to access the information, which can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing? Why is it that now there is that resistance, you think, to just, I don't want to say just doing it, right? But for years, that's what we did. Like, we just did it. You know what I mean? Like, when my son was born, when my wife was pregnant, they said, okay, before you come home, you gotta have a Tdap vaccine. And I can't say, I don't know. Let me go see what I say. No, give me the shot. Bring my boy home. Give me the shot. Right. So I wonder, like, what's the difference now?
See, I feel like the difference now is just the information that's out there that may be right or wrong with COVID, like, because there was so much information given, so much talk about vaccination, where right now, and then people panic because people seeing people dying from it. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's get it. I see people dying. I was one of them. I was one of the ones that had to work through the pandemic, so that's why I think, and then the other shots, people have been accustomed to it, like you said. Like, when you're born, it's just like it was one of those things that you just do. Nobody questioned it, and maybe people should question it more. Whereas now with COVID, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, and theories and all that stuff. That's why I personally feel as though people should just educate themselves. Like, for example, I've seen Redman and Method Man discuss this issue of vaccination or not vaccination. And Redman,
are these people who have credentials, or are these people with
these are rappers?
These are rappers that are active.
That's what I was going to say. Are they credentialed, or are they have a medical degree from the streets?
Yeah, the thing I was bringing up was Method Man took it, and he took it because he had to continue to act on the show Power. Redman refused it and did one episode and just said, nah, that's not for me. I don't want to do it. I feel healthy. I'll check with my doctor and I'm good. So I think you do have these two sides where it's like, there's people who have a great relationship with their doctor and feel like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And then there's people who have to do it for the circumstance that they're in. And the circumstance that a lot of these young people are in is, if I don't get that shot, I can't play. And I don't think they should be put in that position, but they are.
So let me just clear up something, and I'll be brief. One of the reasons why the Faith Initiative came to be during the COVID epidemic. So people like me, my doctor's in public health. I have colleagues who are clergy. Mr. Chavis, with Black people parenting, his connection is because of his exposure and his ability to and willingness to provide education through his social networks of parents. Clinically speaking, the research clinical trial outcomes from COVID. Number one, they were created, we didn't just come up with something. They had been studying COVID, but they did not have the financial resources. You spoke of the need for financial support and athletics building programs and filling gaps. They did not have the resources to put the energy into the research until we had a national and global crisis. This was not something that just happened and where we tried to push data and info down people's throat. They had been working on it, but it wasn't until they got the money that it began to transform itself. Number two, a Black woman, Black researcher was the driving force behind the creation of the vaccine. So this,
North Carolina,
like in North Carolina. So it's like not like HIV when that first came out. The first thing we said as a community was it was a genocide plot. Yep. That it was white folks in the lab creating stuff to kill us. Well, we heard the same vernacular during COVID. Well, we know that that's not true. But my point is twofold. One, hvtn.org, and I'm going to put it in the chat before we get off. There is information that comes directly from the people who are doing this research that's a much better source of information to the public, and they can access it as they wish to read. You've already noted you did self-study, so I'm going to provide you with some additional linkages so that you can look further. Number two, the clinical trials were done on pregnant women as well as adults, male and female, certain ages, races. This was the first time in our country's history that we had as many Black folks enroll in clinical trials to come up with a vaccine that worked for us. That has not been the case in years gone by. And so I want to use this opportunity to say that, one, there is information that's credible out here. It's not based on emotion, but based on the outcomes of tests that were done with people that look like us, and that it is intergenerational. Of the now, to your point, there are some health conditions where a doctor will say, I don't recommend you take it at this time. Or I don't recommend that you take it back to back. In the new year, we're going to get a COVID vaccine that's a dual flu and COVID vaccine combined. So now people don't have to get two shots. They'll be able to get one shot and get the same effect. Okay, so what we're combating now, again, it goes back to the young people's experience and what they hear as messaging. What they hear in messaging has everything to do with how it manifests in their adulthood. So we have adults now who won't get a shingles shot, won't get vaccinated against respiratory RSV. They don't want that, but now it's impacting our health. So we really want to figure out what is the language that how do we engage these conversations, especially in spaces like where you sit, everyday spaces where you have the social capital to influence somebody's desire to act or not to act.
Yes. So I think some coaches do it. Some people do it in athletics where they will bring in people who can give concrete information, right? Some coaches don't care enough. And I think that's where when we even talk about like the youth and their health overall, a lot of these guys out here care about wins and losses, how quickly I can get them so I can move on. So actually building relationships with community or building relationships with, health professionals to talk about, okay, you want to develop your body this way, this is how you do it. That is very rare. And if I could be a little transparent, that's why right now I'm on the fence about a high school that wants me to be a part. Because I told them, you guys look at what the work that I've done and you like it, but I promise you, how I accomplish these things, you're not going to like it, because I would bring in a health professional to talk to somebody who, if I noticed I had a lot of issues with parents understanding something, health professional in, and then now you got to get clearance to get these people in to talk to your student athletes. You know what I mean? So everybody doesn't go for that in sports, because at the end of the day, it comes down to that dollar, and it is at the expense of our children. And I know, coaches might gasp at me saying that. It is at the expense of our children that these institutions, high school and college, and of course the NFL, they could care less. And there are some people that you'll find that care, but overall, they could care less. I need you in that field. I don't care what you shoot. If you believe, if you don't believe, this is what I need. Let's go. Let's get it. Is so nobody.
Do you think the women coaches are the same way?
Nope, I do not. I don't, because my mother. I do believe that they take a little bit more time to build relationship with their student athletes. No, I can tell you that for a fact. That the women coaches that I know have a far more higher level of care for and concern for their athletes than the males.
So I want to pivot just a little bit, because I think that it's important that we talk about, the influence that coaches have on their athletes, right? And Dr. G, we were talking before we got on about how can we reach that younger demographic and let them know the importance of taking care of their bodies. And I don't necessarily just mean taking care of their bodies for athletics. I mean taking care of their bodies as in here's a story. So everyone knows my daughter is in college, right? So one day last semester, I take my daughter to college. I'm glad I remembered this. I take my daughter to class. I went to see her in Greensboro, and I was just hanging out with her that day. So I dropped her off at the class. So I'm parked in the parking lot, right? Young boy pulls up beside me, parks beside me. He's on his phone. He has his windows down. I have my windows down. He's having a conversation on speakerphone with his homeboy. I hear him say, "Hey man, you still ain't got that checked out yet? Your joint gonna fall off." Immediately my ears perked up. Wait a minute, sir. What are we talking about here? He said, I know how I feel, man. Is it burning? You need to go to the clinic. And his homeboy was like, "No, man, I'm scared to go to the clinic." He couldn't have been no more than 20, 21 years old, right? He said, "No, I'm scared to go to the clinic. It got pus." And I'm just sitting there like, what am I listening to right now? This is unbelievable.
Did you interview?
Absolutely not. No.
I would have.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, young boys with a Pooh Shiesty mask on, in 90-degree weather with a hood. No, ma'am. I don't want no kind of smoke with them. A full conversation. I don't know if the boy had chlamydia. He probably had a little touch of everything. But it seemed like there was no regard from the one who was on the phone about like how to get that situation that he was experiencing. His homeboy was trying to help him. He wasn't trying to hear it. So if he's that way at 20, I can only imagine what it's going to be when it's time for him to get a colonoscopy at 45, when it's time for him to get, all of the things that we need to go through as we get older. So my question is, Coach Blocker, how can we reach these young people to help them understand the importance of taking care of themselves, specifically when it comes to sexual health, and just when something's wrong with you, go to the doctor?
Can I add a caveat to that? How many, and this is the question that you can't answer probably, but do we ask every player, do you have a health home? Do you have a doctor? When was the last time you had, not physical for sports, but when was the last time that your caregiver took you to the doctor and you had a full checkup? That means they took your blood. That means you potentially which Dion, I think is a critical issue. I don't think physicians are asking sexual health questions.
No, it's not on the physical.
So that's like, a problem.
Most of our young people, you get your physical to go to school, right? So you got to have one in the system, but none of that's on the questionnaire for the doctor. So none of that comes up. To be honest, coaches could play a huge role in that space, because most of the time the players have no problem being vulnerable with coach. And I say that from personal experience, because when I coached college at Shaw, and then when I coached or was the head coach at Enloe High School, we had times and breakdowns and days like at Enloe where Monday was just called Get It Out Monday. And you'll be surprised that once these kids trust you, how much they will. Sometimes they tell you so much that you're like, yo, chill out. You know what I mean? So it's a trust factor with the kids. The moment they trust you, even if they don't say it right away, it's one of them things like when you get called up to church, when they open the doors of the church, you might not want to be the one to walk up to the front, but once church is over, and then that person will find a way to get to you, as long as you have that connection. And the connection can also come from, people who are in the community, like the Teen Center on Raleigh Boulevard here in North Carolina. They do a tremendous job of building relationships with those kids, where they can talk to them about a multitude of things and bring people in. But if you go at them assuming or matter of facting, they're gonna shut you off quickly. The moment that you come in and you're co-signed and you say, well, look, this is the real deal. Let me show you. A lot of the times they don't see it in other people, so it's not real. Nah, let me show you what this looks like and what these problems are. And you can see it in their eyes, the ones that are like, uh-oh. And then that's the ones you kind of grab and talk to let them know that, look, this is how we can work through things, because many of them don't see the inroad. So even with something like a vaccination, the why is so important for our youth. They ask more questions than we ever thought about asking, because we were told not to ask questions because I said so. But our young people, they ask why so much, especially athletes that I've dealt with and been around and seen. Why, coach? Why I got to do that? And when you start to insert those nuggets, it may not happen right away, but I promise you they'll double back. And answering that why is big, and building that trust is even bigger. Once you do that.
You in high school or college coaching?
So currently I'm in high school. I was in college as well. I coached at Shaw University for 4 years.
So in your school district, you made a comment earlier about the restrictions that school districts have to adhere to in bringing in someone like me, which as a former health consultant with the Department of Education, that was my total job, was going to schools, training teachers, talking to young people. What are the laws in North Carolina that would prohibit you from bringing in a health professional to talk about sexual health and sexual responsibility, talking about vaccines, advantages, disadvantages, etc., at different intervals during the year? Are there restrictions on you? And if so, what kind of restrictions? And if you don't know what they are, feel free to say that as well.
So the process is not so much the restrictions, it's the process. And the reason why is because everything is up to the principal of your school. So if the principal of your school, if you say, hey, I want to bring in this health professional, you got to write out a whole, for me, it felt like a whole dissertation of why this person is coming to your school, what is the message, et cetera, et cetera. Then if he approves it, then you're in. Politicians and things like that have to take a different role than me bringing in a healthcare professional, because they're going to base it on the fact that you being a doctor, that there's going to be a level of professionalism that you have to keep and stay in, versus trying to sway someone's opinion on anything. It's just more so straight down the lane. I have had healthcare professionals and even sex educators come in to my school to talk, but it was a lot of conversation amongst the administration team of, well, do we want any flack? Do we want any flack from this if something goes wrong? So it's not so much.
So North Carolina does not require reproductive health, pregnancy prevention, education, and HIV, sexually transmitted infections. That's not there.
That's not a requirement. No. Now they do have, like in both schools that I'm at now, they do have those classes, but not as a requirement.
So for those that are listening, in South Carolina, for example, we do have comprehensive school health. There is a mandate that says that between middle school or 6th to 12th grade, with the emphasis on senior high, that in senior high school, this is ludicrous to a point, it says they must have at least 750 minutes of reproductive health, pregnancy prevention, STDs, HIV. Now, we've spent more than 750 minutes watching a series on Netflix, Tubi, or something else. So that should pretty much tell you that it's not a lot.
Correct.
But it's required.
So then for us, it's an elective class all day. So you have guys that some take it, some don't, but it's there, but it's not required.
So is there a responsibility of the our local government, and this might dive a little bit deeper since we're in political season, is there a responsibility of our local government to reinforce some of these things? Because now we're seeing that schools are so busy taking things out, assessing what history is and what it looks like and all of those things. And if we continue to go backwards, right, we're going to look at a place where there won't be any sort of information about sexual health in the school system, right? Because they're taking out books. Any books that mention LGBTQ, they gotta go. Any books in some places that mention that slavery was bad, they gotta go. So as parents, what can we do? Like, what can we do to combat the fact that the schools aren't giving that information on sexual health like they once were?
I believe we need to go ahead and look at it because teen pregnancy continues to rise. And also, without being super, super deep, the content of music that our youth listens to talks about it. So then once again, and Dion, I always say it all the time, I believe in balance. So if I can be a pause, let me rewind real quick. Maybe North Carolina's trying, and here's why I say that. There are porn sites that have been taken out of the state, where in the state of North Carolina, you can't watch it. But that does not mean they don't have access. If these young people have their phone, they can get access to whatever they would like to see on that phone. I believe as long as there's no restrictions on these phones and these kids can get access to anything, then we need to supply education to balance out what they're seeing on these phones. Because it blows my mind how quickly kids get access to whatever it is that they want access to. So if I want to watch porn, I just got to go to a certain website and say I'm 18 and I'm in. But then there's nothing there to educate me on what I am seeing. And that's where, like, I personally have a problem because there's no balance. So then they can just keep absorbing all this on their phone, and there's nobody else that is, for lack of a better word, mandated to teach them, like, nah, this is how we handle these situations. What you guys are seeing or accessing on these phones, this is not like intimacy. This is not relationship. This is what could lead to these things. These are sexually transmitted diseases that come with this. Like, there's no balance. So I do feel as though as long as porn is easily accessible, education for prevention should be just as accessible.
Now, don't quote me on this. I don't know this from experience, but I hear what I understand, that it's a little bit harder than just putting your age in on Pornhub to get access to it. Then
So being with these
I don't
young
know.
people,
This is just what I hear. I don't
man,
know.
these young cats are. When I tell you what they can do with these phones and how quickly they can do it and what they can tap into, that's why if you really want to touch our young people, just take their cell phones from them for a second, and it's just like unplugging a lamp. All of a sudden, it's like they're back in the world again. But as long as they have that phone, I can tell you right now, as I'm sitting here, they can access whatever they want to.
You put Pornhub in a driver, it's going to bring it up, and when you tap on it, it's going to put you into the site.
How you know?
Because I checked it out. Because in order for you, look, I'm not, that's the conversation we parents got to have. Because I look at my 17-year-old grandson, I say, yo, dude, what you thought I was born yesterday? You thought, what you think just because what's up?
Yeah.
And so in order for me to address, educate, and confront, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. It's the same like in faith. Everybody's always surprised when a clergy person talks about a rap song. When they talking about Lil Kim or they talking about Cardi B or something that they and they can recite the lyric.
Sexy Red, Dr. G. Sexy Red.
You know what I'm saying? That they're trying to make. Yeah. And people say, what you know about that? That pastor should know about that.
Yeah, you have to
know about it, because sitting in them pews are kids that are acting one way in front of the pastor and a whole nother way when they're with their crew.
Mm-hmm.
We keep making these false assumptions that we should not know what's up. So I checked it out. Yeah, I want to know how they're accessing it. That and other things, so that not so I can educate them about it, but when I say I know you getting access, they know I know they're getting access.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just to kind of go back to what Coach Block said about taking phones away, I will be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that the second largest school district in the country, LAUSD, has mandated that as of next school year, none of their students will be allowed to have cell phones at school.
Yeah. Data to support why.
Yeah.
And right after, it's funny. Right after that, either right before or the day after, the Surgeon General came out and said that social media should have a warning label on it. So. Yeah. I think we might be reaching a point, I don't know, where there may be some sort of turning of the tide.
Mm-hmm.
I think both of those, I'm kind of in the middle of the kids having cell phones at school.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think maybe there should be some sort of, when my daughter was in school, she had some teachers who would give her you had to give her the phone, they locked the phones away.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, as a parent, I don't know if I would want to be disconnected from my child for 8 hours. And I'm helicopter dad. I'm helicopter dad. So I might be the extreme. Yeah, I'm the extreme, Dr. G. But what if something happens? What if there's a school shooting? And what if, you know what I'm saying? What if my child is hungry and she needs me to bring her some, what am I do?
Well, see.
Your question.
You gotta go to the office and call me.
Let me ask you a question. It's back to parenting. So, I think about, I'm a person that cooks Sunday dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I cooked neck bones and rice and yams and cornbread and what else? All this stuff, right?
I ain't heard no vegetable yet.
Well, I had salad on the side. What do you mean you didn't hear no vegetables? I had vegetables in there. Anyway, cauliflower or something. Anyway. And blueberry cauliflower.
Wait a minute. Neck bones and cauliflower do not go together. Come on now. You ain't made no cauliflower.
I love cauliflower, especially fried cauliflower. But anyway, when one of the things I like, and I constantly fight it, is that I sit up here and cook all this food, and y'all don't want to sit down to the table and eat like a family. Or you want to sit down but you want your phone. And I was like, get rid of the phone when we're talking.
Mhm.
First, I have to fight the grown-ups.
Mhm.
Okay, so we keep talking about young people, but we first have to translate. Some adults are worse than children when it comes to the release of their phone.
Correct.
And so, how do we, this LA move, which is based on data, one of the things I heard them say was the number of young people that when they had their phones taken actually went back and thanked them, that the pressure that it took off of them not having access was like profound.
Right.
And my grandson broke his phone. His mom said, "You're not getting one unless your other grandmama get you one." And he told me, "I'm good without my phone." So I think to your point, if we adults would start being adults and stop allowing persons who don't have the life experience we have to dictate what happens in a home, in a classroom, etc., we might just find out that those young people will thank us at the end of the day, although they exist.
I can speak to that point 100%. So I'm the in-school suspension coordinator. So I handle all the disciplinary issues and all that stuff, right? And so the first thing you have to do when you come into my classroom is give up your phone. No matter what, you give up the phone. So they have their little pockets that they can put them in or whatever. But now I have a problem in my classroom after coordinating this for a year, because students want to come to my classroom because they say it's quiet. I can do my work. I can get caught up on my work. And so now students who are not even in trouble want to come into my room now because they've experienced the fact that this is what class is like without a phone. So when I seen it happen, I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, so you'll have students that'll fight about I need my phone. But then when they're mandated to put it away, because the same kid that may argue in a classroom and say, you can't take my phone, or they know if they get in trouble with me, they have to give up their phone. That same kid goes from, I don't want to do my work, to, can you call the teacher and get my assignments? And then now I've actually had data where I shared with the principal, I have had students' grades increase within the semester. So that phone being in their hand is a problem. Now, do I think that they shouldn't have access to it at all? Well, when you have lunch and all that stuff, I think they should get their phone back. Okay, lunch, whatever social time that they have, they should have their phone. But once we get into that classroom and it's time to focus on the task at hand, I believe the phones need to go away. They can't handle both, because the one thing I challenge anyone to do, especially an educator, ask one of the kids that you're pretty cool with, ask them to hold their phone during the classroom period and watch how many times that thing pings. And it's crazy because it's not just people alerting them that's in the school. You got people from other schools calling in, and wanting to FaceTime. It's wild how that phone does not stop. So how can I focus? And down here in North Carolina, we have 90-minute classes. How can I focus for 90 minutes if I constantly got ding, 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 or buzz going off in my pocket? I'm not even listening.
You left out the drug deals, and you left out the baby mama drama.
And the fights. They coordinate their fights. They coordinate their fights on the phone.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would love to see an atmosphere where they're, once again, balanced. Hey, when it's lunchtime, y'all got your phones. When you go back to class, drop the phone. And, or if there is 90 minutes, to me is a long time for class. I do believe that a lot of these kids are suffering also in that aspect when we talk about just mental health as well. If I, as an adult, go somewhere and I am sitting for 90 minutes, like let's say a movie, I go to a movie, I sit for 90 minutes. If the movie's not good, I get up and walk out. Teachers have to do a better job at times connecting with their students, because you got this kid for 90 minutes and the first thing he's thinking about is how the hell I can get out of here. Like, which way can I go? Because I'm not connecting, especially in math and science. I don't have my numbers with me, but I had to do a whole thing for our administration board because I found out and figured out that majority of our students, and especially my student athletes in that school, are walking out of math class and they're walking out of science class at an alarming rate. But what do they have in their hand every time they walk out and get caught? Their cell phone, because they're trying to coordinate with another student who can't handle math or who can't handle English, and now they just want to skip class. Like, it's that dynamic is deep with that cell phone, like really deep.
So in our last few minutes together, I want to pivot a little bit. I feel like we've talked enough about the kids.
All right.
What I want to talk to you about, Coach Blocker, is you are a father yourself, and you are one of few Black male educators, right? It ain't a lot of y'all.
No.
When I go to schools, when I go into these spaces, they talk about how very few Black male educators, how very few Black men there are in these spaces.
Yeah.
So what I want to discuss with only four. So wow, that's crazy. So what I want to talk to you about is how Black men in the space that you're in, how are you managing your health physically and your mental health? Because when we think about, number one, the microaggressors that could come with being the only Black male or one of very few Black males in a space. When we think about the stress that comes with dealing with these young people for 8 hours a day, I don't know how you do it. I could not. When you think about the stress that comes with being a parent of children, you got all girls?
All girls, 3 of them.
All girls. That is a stressor in itself.
Watch.
3 girls. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry, Dr. G. How are Black men in all of these spaces that you are in, since it is Mental Health Month, how are you, and what strategies would you give for Black men to be sure that we're taking care of ourselves?
Get a therapist. That's the number one thing I'm going to tell you to do. You got to have somebody that you can talk to, because you're going to take in everything from these kids, especially the Black ones, because many of them may not have that male influence. And you immediately, whether you like it or not, turn into that person.
Do
So
you have one?
I'm sorry?
Do you have one?
Yes, ma'am. James Perkins has been doing a job with me. Thank you, James Perkins. If you're watching, appreciate you. But yes, and it took me a while to get one, to be honest, because when you're speaking this, from coaching and dealing with the normal students, not the student athletes, but just your everyday students, I ended up with high blood pressure from stress, because I'm taking in everything. There was a time that I had told my fiance, literally, quote, "My soul is tired." And the reason why is because these kids are grabbing, "Coach, I haven't eaten. Coach, my mom is doing this. Coach, I was locked out today. Coach," you spend so much time with that they won't say that to your fellow white teachers unless they built that relationship, which is far and few between. But once they come into my room, I have kids that literally check in. "Coach, let me tell you about what happened last night." I'm like, "Are you supposed to be in here?" "No, but I gotta tell you, my mom was tripping." And so you absorb these things, right? Because we know our youth need that safe space to be able to communicate and be able to talk. One of my youth, and I felt so bad, I found out, and she ended up telling me without telling me, she was being molested. And so this is a young Black girl. So you talk about a dad of 3 girls, and I got a young girl who felt comfortable enough to tell me that she was being molested and everything was true. You eat that, and you're taking that on every single day. So what I suggest, one, is for you to be well enough, our Black educators to be well enough mentally and emotionally to take that. Because what happens is you can't stop it from, you can try to put on whatever face you want to. When they see that familiar Black face, these young souls are coming. I prayed before every day before those kids come through that door, I pray, because you can feel the energy and the spirits that they bring. They're bringing it with them. They're just like a backpack. It's on their back, and they're looking to communicate with you. The other advice I have is don't take any of this personally. You're the adult. So sometimes the kids may cuss and fuss, and that's just them getting it out in the way that they get it from home. And so you got to be able to decipher and read between the lines of what the cussing and fussing is, and not. I've seen a younger teacher take it personally. A younger brother, he took it personally. He fired back at the kid, and then now you see that messiness that goes on in that energy. That's that energy that just feeds, and then it spreads out to the classroom. There's so much that goes into this just before we even talk about creating a safe space for the kids to learn. So I would say that just take your time, get yourself a therapist to talk to, because you're going to need it, because you're going to hear some things that you want to take a kid and just take them home, but you can't. And, and then also be very patient with our youth, because you may be the only smile or the only conversation they can have that can fuel them to get to the next day.
That's a fact. Well, thank you, Coach Blocker. Dr. Gaddis, would you like to say anything to close us out of this wonderful episode, ma'am?
No, other than just to say that this has been, it has been very motivating for me tonight. As a grandmother, a great grandmother, as a person who has in more recent years, I'm being driven to really focus my public health attention to Black men. They are the backbone of families, and we need to save them. We need to keep them. We need to protect them. It's another talk. It's another show. But I want one day, Dion, to talk about how is it that we've gotten to a point where once Black boys get a certain age, we think they're all grown now.
Oh, for sure.
That they don't need nurturance, and that they should get out there and just do it. That they don't need hugs and kisses and loving. Not sexual loving, but nurturing. And I think it's another conversation for another day. And how do we get grown Black men to do more nurturing with their Black boys, with their Black sons? And so my interest in the future and trying to create avenues for young Black men to get access to health care, to get access to education, so that they can protect themselves now and in the future. So I thank HVTN for this opportunity, and certainly thank Dion because of his focus and his drive to help preserve Black families. And so I thank you, Coach Blocker. You're the first coach we've had last couple of years. And so it was a pleasure meeting you.
Likewise.
It's funny that you said it, Dr. G. I just posted on my Instagram, I'm going to post on our Facebook probably when we get off of here, a video of my son and I out to eat on my birthday. And the video is me giving him a hug and like kissing him on his forehead. And the caption is just, be the soft landing that your kids need, because this world is hard enough. And I think oftentimes we don't think about how hard it is for these kids out here, specifically for our Black boys, our Black babies in general. But like you said, that whole notion of kicking them out of the house at 18 and cutting them off at a certain age, and you're a man, get out here and do for yourself.
And the things that women do with their daughters, men don't want to do with their sons. Like, we going shopping today. We're going to buy a suit, or we're going to hang out or whatever. What happened to those days? We need those back. We have father and son fun Fridays on my house. So Fridays for us is usually our day to go out and kick it. And he loves Subway, so we'll go to Subway and eat lunch and find some trouble to get into.
That's dope.
And that's how we do. So thank y'all. We'll be back with another one of these episodes. We're doing 2 this week, so we'll be back again on Thursday at 7:00. We're going to do a special episode with the barbershop. I got some barbers that's gonna come. They're gonna talk about the role that they play in men's health. We're going all out for Men's Health Month. So Coach Block, thank you. We appreciate you. Dr. Gaddis, we'll see you on Thursday. And thank y'all, everybody. Appreciate you.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.